Welcome back to Sarah's Werewolf Romance collection, where the alphas are lethal and the heroines always bite back. Quick question for the pack before we dive into today's chaos. Have you ever accidentally sent a text to the absolute worst person possible? Let me know your most embarrassing texting fail in the comments and drop a cat emoji if you have a furry friend currently judging your audiobook choices. Today, we have a special one. It's a fast-paced, slow-burn romantic comedy. It's intensely funny, incredibly high stakes, and involves a stressed-out tech analyst who accidentally airdrops a ridiculous bear meme to the most terrifying alpha king on the continent right in the middle of a war council. But before we hit send, if you want to support the channel and get early access to exclusive romantasy stories just like this one, hit that join button down below. It helps us keep the microphones on and the amazing stories coming. Now, take a deep breath and double-check your group chats. The meme has been delivered, and the king is waiting. Let's read. Chapter 1. The War Council chamber was suffocatingly warm, filled with the stifling arrogance of 20 high-ranking Alpha and Beta commanders. Kat sat securely in the peripheral shadows, desperate to remain entirely unnoticed. She reached down to the floor, her fingers brushing the familiar, worn texture of her faded leather messenger bag, and retrieved her biometric tactical tablet. Adjusting her oversized blue light-blocking glasses, Kat tapped the screen. She was the lead tactical analyst, a Delta Wolf whose entire job was to manage the digital infrastructure of the pack. However, right now, her primary focus was staying awake. She chewed on the inside of her cheek, a nervous habit that flared whenever she was trapped in a room full of lethal predators. Her dark hair was twisted into a chaotic knot, secured only by a blue ink pen she had blindly stabbed into the strands an hour ago. If General Harris spends another 20 minutes arguing about the southern perimeter, I might actually perish from pure boredom, Kat thought, her fingers flying over the glass screen. I need a distraction before my brain liquefies. At the head of the colossal oak table, Alpha King Samson Ironheart paced with lethal grace. He wore a tailored, dark charcoal suit that stretched tightly across his imposing shoulders. His pitch-black eyes tracked the bickering generals, his frustration a tangible force in the room. He ran his thumb over the royal signet ring on his index finger, a clear sign of his dwindling patience. Why do I bother convening a council when half these fools are more concerned with their own egos than a looming threat? Samson mused, his jaw ticking in annoyance. I am surrounded by incompetence. Seeking a brief escape from the tedious dialogue, Kat minimized the tactical maps. She quickly drafted a message to her best friend in the lower-level tech lab. She attached a highly circulating meme, a picture of a massive, angry bear wearing a tiny, ridiculous party hat. Underneath it, she typed, "Me, pretending to care about pack politics when I just want a snack." She smiled, relishing the private joke. Her finger moved to tap the send icon. At that exact second, General Harris slammed his fist onto the oak table, causing Kat to flinch violently. Her finger slipped. It bypassed the secure private chat and struck the main network broadcast button. Kat blinked. A terrifying, distinct chime echoed from the center of the mahogany table. The sprawling holographic monitor, sitting directly in front of the Alpha King, flared to life. The angry bear in the tiny party hat materialized in glowing high definition. The caption scrolled boldly underneath it for every seasoned warrior to read. The chamber plunged into complete, horrifying silence. Please tell me the network lagged. Please tell me that did not just happen. Kat pleaded internally, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Maybe I can claim rogues hacked our secure mainframe. Samson halted his pacing. He stared down at the brightly illuminated meme. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his head. His dark, piercing gaze bypassed the elite commanders entirely and locked instantly onto the shadowy corner where the tech crew operated. His eyes fixed on Kat. She's the only one in this room who isn't shrinking back in terror. Samson noted, his gaze cataloging the pen in her messy hair and the defiant tilt of her chin. And why does she suddenly smell like a tantalizing blend of crushed wild blackberries and sweet rain? Kat sank a fraction of an inch lower in her ergonomic chair. Samson did not shout. He did not issue a terrifying reprimand. He smoothly pulled an encrypted comms device from his jacket pocket, his thumbs moving swiftly across the screen. He set the device down. A second later, Kat's tablet vibrated in her hands. A single notification flashed across her locked screen from a restricted administrative number. My quarters. Now. Chapter 2. The trek from the war chamber to the royal wing was a grueling march toward what Kat assumed was her immediate termination. She clutched her faded leather messenger bag tightly against her side, treating it like a pathetic shield against the king's imminent wrath. The corridors transitioned from standard packed masonry to opulent, sound-dampened stone, amplifying the terrifying quiet. I am going to be banished to the barren northern territories, Kat concluded, her pulse racing wildly. Or worse, he'll demote me to filing paper archives in the basement. I need a backup career plan immediately. She reached the towering oak door of Samson's private office. Taking a deep breath to steady her trembling hands, she pushed the heavy brass handle. The room was expansive, lined with towering bookshelves and bathed in the dim light of modern desk lamps. Samson stood by a massive mahogany desk. He had already discarded his dark charcoal suit jacket, tossing it carelessly over a leather chair. The stark white fabric of his dress shirt stretched taut across his broad chest as he rolled up his sleeves. Close it, Samson commanded, his voice a deep, resonant rumble that demanded instant obedience. Kat quickly shut the door. A heavy mechanical lock clicked into place, echoing loudly in the quiet space. A sharp jolt of panic seized her chest, making it difficult to draw a full breath. She remained frozen near the entryway, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag so tightly her knuckles ached. He locked the door. This is it. He is going to literally throw me out of the nearest window, Kat thought, her mind scrambling for a defensive strategy. I should have brought Fluffy to bite his ankles. Samson turned to face her, leaning back against the edge of his desk. His dark eyes studied her with a piercing intensity that made her squirm. He didn't mention the bear meme. He didn't mention the party hat. She is terrified, yet she stands her ground, refusing to lower her gaze, Samson observed, a flicker of genuine intrigue cutting through his exhaustion. Her blackberry scent is spiking with anxiety, but she isn't bowing like the rest of my sycophants. Bring out your tablet, Samson instructed flatly, crossing his arms. Kat blinked, thoroughly confused by the sudden pivot. She opened the flap of her messenger bag, her fingers locating the smooth metal casing of her biometric tablet. She pulled it free, waking the screen with a quick tap of her thumb. She kept her oversized glasses firmly perched on her nose, treating them as a barrier between her and the imposing alpha. I apologize for the broadcast. My king, Kat started, eager to launch into her rehearsed defense. It was a catastrophic misfire of the tactical interface. I don't care about the image, Samson interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. I care about the firewall protocols you govern, specifically the secure logs tracking the eastern border patrols. Kat halted her frantic apologies. The Delta Wolf inside her, the logic-driven tech analyst, instantly snapped to attention. She tapped a series of complex passcodes into her tablet, bringing up the glowing encrypted server maps. The firewall is intact, Kat stated, her tone shifting from panic to professional. I run diagnostic checks every 12 hours. Nothing breaches the perimeter without a verified digital signature. I know, Samson replied, his expression darkening with a grim reality, which means the leak isn't coming from outside the network. He isn't firing me. He's bringing me into a classified crisis. Kat realized, a sudden chill racing down her spine. I am profoundly underpaid for this level of royal drama. Samson pushed off the desk, taking a slow, measured step toward her. The sheer size of him was overwhelming up close. Someone within my inner circle is handing our patrol routes to rogue factions. I need someone entirely disconnected from the elite command to find the breach. Chapter 3. Kat stared at the Alpha King, the glowing screen of her tablet illuminating her face. The gravity of his statement hung heavily in the quiet office. A traitor within the highest ranks of the pack was a catastrophic problem. It meant betrayal from a beta general or a wealthy alpha allied with the crown. He wants me to investigate the most dangerous wolves on the continent, Kat thought. her instinct for self-preservation screaming at maximum volume. I manage servers, so I don't have to deal with murderers. I am severely unqualified for espionage. Without a word, Kat reached out and pressed the power button on her tablet. The screen went completely black. She slipped the device back into her faded leather messenger bag and snapped the metal clasp shut. She adjusted her glasses and took a deliberate step backward toward the locked oak door. "No, thank you," Kat said politely, shaking her head. "I am a Delta. My security clearance is strictly technical. I respectfully decline this promotion to Royal Target Practice." Samson's dark brows pulled together in a rare expression of pure shock. Nobody ever told the Alpha King no. Did she just casually reject a direct royal mandate? Samson wondered, fighting the sudden urge to laugh. My generals cower when I clear my throat, and this tiny tech analyst just packed up her bag and tried to walk away. "It is not a request, Kat," Samson stated, his tone dropping into a commanding, dangerous register. He took another step forward, closing the distance. "I cannot trust the warriors who train beside me. The leak is leaving a digital footprint, and you are the only person brilliant enough to track it without triggering their alarms." Kat crossed her arms defensively. She felt a profound wave of apprehension, a sharp tightness settling in her chest. If a beta general realizes a lowly tech analyst is digging through their encrypted files, they will rip my head off before you can even draw a weapon. I have a cat to feed, Your Highness. I cannot participate in a suicide mission. Samson paused, rolling the silver signet ring around his index finger. He studied her stubborn posture, recognizing the practical fear driving her refusal. She wasn't being defiant for the sake of it. She was applying pure, unadulterated logic to a highly volatile situation. "I will personally guarantee your safety," Samson countered, his voice steady and resolute. "You will be under my direct, exclusive protection." Protection means proximity. Kat calculated rapidly, her mind spinning. Proximity to the king makes me a bigger target, but if I refuse, he could just fire me anyway. "I know what you were saving for," Samson added quietly, playing his final card. "The secluded mountain property on the western ridge, the one far away from pack politics." Kat's jaw dropped slightly. The blue ink pen holding her messy hair in place suddenly felt very heavy. "How do you know about that?" "I am the king. I know everything," Samson replied smoothly. "Find the digital leak. Identify the traitor. Do this, and I will compensate you with a staggering sum, enough to buy that cabin in cash tomorrow." Kat looked at her leather messenger bag, then back to the imposing Alpha. The promise of total financial freedom and a permanent escape from this stressful city was intoxicating. It was the exact leverage he needed to break her resolve. "Fine." Kat sighed heavily, her shoulders slumping. "But we do this my way, and you owe me hazard pay." Chapter 4. The rhythmic, insistent knocking on Kat's apartment door sounded entirely too aggressive for a Tuesday evening. Kat sighed, pausing the diagnostic scan on her biometric tablet. She was seated cross-legged on her faded living room rug, wrapped in an oversized sweater. "I'm coming," she called out, shoving her tablet under a throw pillow just in case it was a nosy neighbor. Kat unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Samson Ironheart stood in her narrow hallway, looking entirely out of place. He wore a heavy, dark tactical jacket over a black shirt, his presence dominating the small space. His ink-dark eyes scanned the modest apartment before settling on her. "We need to review the perimeter logs," Samson stated, stepping inside without waiting for a formal invitation. He moves like he owns the very floorboards he walks on, Kat thought, quickly shutting the door behind him. I suppose technically he does own the building. I really need to establish some professional boundaries. Before Kat could respond, a pristine white blur launched from the top of the bookshelf. Fluffy, Kat's rescue cat, landed with a heavy, ungraceful thud directly onto the toe of Samson's expensive combat boot. The cat, looking like an angry, overinflated cloud, immediately dug his sharp claws into the dark leather. Samson froze. He looked down at the furious feline attacking his footwear. Fluffy let out a raspy, hostile yowl. his bright white fur instantly beginning to shed and drift onto the king's immaculate dark trousers. "I have decimated entire rogue factions with my bare hands," Samson mused, his body completely rigid. "Yet, I am currently being held hostage by a hostile ball of lint that smells vaguely of fish." "Fluffy, no!" Cat scolded gently, though she made no immediate move to rescue the king. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her oversized sweater and pulled out a small pouch of organic cat treats. She shook it once. The white cat instantly abandoned the assault on the combat boots. He trotted over to Cat, expecting his reward for defending the territory. Cat tossed a treat onto the rug, and Fluffy began to meticulously chew it, completely ignoring the towering alpha in the room. Samson slowly looked down at his dark pants. A distinct, highly visible layer of white cat hair clung to the fabric from the knee down. He let out a long, exhausted breath, but chose not to comment on the visual destruction of his wardrobe. "He's very protective of his environment," Cat offered casually, walking back to the sofa. She pulled her biometric tablet from beneath the throw pillow and tapped the screen to wake it. "Sit down. Just don't sit on the squeaky mouse. He will legitimately fight you for it." Samson cautiously lowered his massive frame onto the small, slightly lumpy sofa, ensuring he avoided the plush toy resting near the armrest. He pulled his encrypted comms device from his jacket pocket, unlocking it to share a file. "I pulled the physical shift reports from the Beta barracks," Samson said, his tone shifting back to business. "Compare them to the digital network logins." Kat accepted the file transfer on her tablet. She pushed her oversized glasses further up her nose, her eyes scanning the complex columns of data. The sweet scent of wild blackberries drifted in the small room, cutting through the sterile smell of the apartment building. "Here." Kat pointed to a specific timestamp on the glowing screen. "General Graves' physical log says he was in the training yard at midnight, but his unique digital signature accessed the eastern grid maps from the command center at the exact same time." Samson leaned closer, his shoulder brushing against hers. The discrepancy was glaring. "He can't be in two places at once. The logs are compromised." Chapter 5. Kat quickly stood from the lumpy sofa, sliding her biometric tactical tablet into the depths of her faded leather messenger bag. She secured the heavy metal clasp with a decisive click. "If we are investigating an active border outpost in the middle of the night, I need to change. Give me 2 minutes," she instructed the formidable monarch. Samson merely offered a terse nod, his pitch-black eyes following her swift retreat. Kat slipped into her cramped bedroom, discarding her oversized sweater. She hastily donned a rugged, dark utility jacket, carefully transferring the pouch of organic cat treats from the discarded sweater into the jacket's deep front pocket. Object permanence was vital. She refused to be caught without a distraction if Fluffy decided to launch another ambush. When she emerged, Samson was already standing near the door. The distinct layer of white cat hair still clung stubbornly to his dark trousers, and faint scratch marks marred the leather of his expensive boots. He made no effort to brush the fur away, projecting an aura of lethal patience. Fluffy remained blissfully occupied, ruthlessly gnawing on his plush, squeaky mouse, completely ignoring their departure. They navigated the narrow, creaking stairwell in utter silence. Stepping into the brisk evening breeze, Kat led the towering Alpha toward the dimly lit street corner. "Where is your security detail?" Kat inquired, her gaze scanning the empty pavement. "And more importantly, where is your imposing vehicle?" A matte charcoal armored SUV bearing the royal crest is the antithesis of discreet, Samson countered, his deep cadence resonating in the quiet night. "We are utilizing your transport." Kat stopped abruptly, pointing a slender finger toward the curb. Beneath a flickering amber street lamp sat her pride and joy, a meticulously restored, plum-purple vintage hatchback she affectionately dubbed the Grape. "Definitely not," Kat argued, her brow furrowing behind her oversized blue light-blocking glasses. "The Grape is a delicate, temperamental machine. She is not engineered to accommodate a warrior of your staggering, ridiculous proportions." "He is going to shatter my suspension just by sitting down," Kat lamented silently, already calculating the prohibitive repair costs she would inevitably incur. "I should have demanded my hazard pay up front." Samson arched a single, dark eyebrow, thoroughly unimpressed by her protest. He strode toward the plum-purple vehicle, grasping the small passenger door handle. "Unlock it." Grumbling under her breath, Kat retrieved her keys from her jacket pocket and manually unlocked the doors. She slid into the driver's seat, wincing as she watched the Alpha King attempt to fold his massive frame into the confined passenger side. His broad shoulders pressed awkwardly against the window glass, and his knees practically touched the dashboard. "I have survived brutal sieges and defeated feral warlords," Samson mused, shifting uncomfortably against the faded upholstery. "Yet folding myself into this miniature purple contraption feels like the most hazardous mission of my reign." "Try not to breathe too heavily," Kat advised sarcastically, inserting the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered slightly, before roaring to life with a valiant, uneven purr. "You are monopolizing all the oxygen." "Just drive the car, Kat," Samson murmured, staring straight ahead. The journey to the eastern perimeter was fraught with tense, quiet maneuvering. Kat navigated the winding, forested roads with surprising dexterity, avoiding deep potholes to spare her groaning suspension. The dense canopy of ancient trees obscured the moonlight, plunging the rural highway into thick, heavy shadows. "General Graves reported 3 sequential perimeter breaches in this sector last month," Samson noted, his knee bumping against the gear shift as Kat turned a sharp corner. He blamed feral rogues, but the digital footprint you uncovered suggests a coordinated routing error. "Which means someone bypassed the encryption manually," Kat affirmed, her hands gripping the steering wheel. As the grape crested the final ridge, the eastern checkpoint came into view. Kat slowed the hatchback, allowing the engine to idle quietly. The small, reinforced guardhouse sat near the edge of the territory line, illuminated by a single, harsh floodlight. However, the reinforced boom gate was raised. The heavy steel door to the guardhouse hung slightly ajar. "The perimeter is entirely exposed," Samson whispered, his posture instantly shifting from cramped annoyance to predatory focus. "The post is abandoned." Chapter 6. Kat shifted the grape into park, extinguishing the headlights to drape them in protective darkness. The engine cut out, leaving a chilling, expectant quiet in the dense forest. Samson unbuckled his seatbelt with a sharp, metallic click, his imposing frame practically bursting from the confined passenger space as he shoved his door open. "Stay behind me," Samson commanded in a hushed, authoritative whisper. He stepped onto the gravel shoulder, his scuffed combat boots crunching faintly. Kat ignored the mandate entirely. She unslung her faded leather messenger bag, securing the strap firmly across her chest, and exited the driver's side. The brisk night wind whipped her dark hair around her face. She pushed her oversized glasses higher on her nose, ensuring her vision remained perfectly unobstructed. "If he thinks I am waiting in the car like a helpless damsel while rogues might be lurking nearby, he is profoundly mistaken," Kat decided, adjusting the collar of her dark utility jacket. "I need to secure the network before any data is purged." Samson cast a fleeting, disapproving glare over his broad shoulder when he realized she was trailing him, but he refrained from arguing. They approached the illuminated guardhouse with cautious, measured steps. The heavy steel door was partially open, but it was jammed against a deformed floor plate, refusing to budge further. Without a second of hesitation, Samson raised his boot and delivered a devastating, localized strike near the locking mechanism. The impact sounded like a cannon firing. The heavy metal door wrenched violently off its hinges, crashing inward and skidding across the concrete floor. The entrance was now permanently dismantled, leaving a gaping, jagged hole in the facade. "Subtle," Kat muttered, stepping carefully over the ruined doorframe. "Efficient," Samson corrected, his ink-dark eyes scanning the desolate interior. The guardhouse was a mess of scattered paperwork, overturned chairs, and spilled coffee that had long since dried into a sticky residue. It bore the undeniable hallmarks of a frantic, disorganized evacuation. Kat bypassed the physical debris, marching directly toward the primary security console mounted against the far wall. She unlatched her messenger bag, retrieving her biometric tactical tablet. Her fingers danced swiftly across the smooth glass, initiating a localized scan of the outpost's hardware. The physical patrol didn't just abandon this post, they fled in a panic. Samson observed, kneeling to inspect a scuff mark on the concrete. Graves orchestrated a deliberate blind spot in our defenses. I'm connecting to the console now, Kat announced, holding her tablet near the terminal. Lines of encrypted code scrolled rapidly across her screen. She frowned, her teeth sinking nervously into her lower lip. Wait, the main network hasn't been remotely wiped. There is an external, localized receiver attached to the motherboard. This is incredibly rudimentary for a high-level beta general, Kat analyzed, her technical mind racing through the possibilities. Unless Graves isn't the architect of this treason, unless he is merely a pawn taking orders from a superior technician. She crouched beneath the heavy desk, illuminating the dark crevice with the flashlight feature on her tablet. Wedged securely against the dusty motherboard was a small, blinking, digital bug. It was a parasite, actively siphoning the encrypted border codes and transmitting them to an unknown frequency. I found it, Kat declared, reaching out carefully. It's a localized transmitter. If I sever the connection properly, I can isolate the frequency and track exactly who Graves is communicating with. Do it quickly, Samson warned, his posture stiffening as his acute hearing caught a distant anomaly. Kat meticulously unplugged the tiny device, dropping it securely into the pocket of her utility jacket, right next to the pouch of organic cat treats. The console screen flickered, instantly resetting to its default secure lockdown mode. Before Kat could celebrate her swift digital victory, a harsh rhythmic sound shattered the rural silence. Heavy aggressive tires crunched loudly against the gravel road outside. The rumbling growl of multiple unidentifiable engines echoed through the trees, rapidly approaching their exposed position. They were definitely not alone. Chapter 7. The sudden roar of approaching engines sent a sharp spike of adrenaline straight through Kat's veins. Through the shattered, gaping entrance where the steel door used to hang, twin beams of harsh headlights swept across the tree line. The convoy was moving fast, decelerating abruptly as they neared the abandoned checkpoint. I have a biometric tablet, a pouch of cat treats, and zero combat training. Kat cataloged her inventory frantically. If they swarm this building, my survival odds drop to 0. I am going to die in a plum-purple hatchback. Move, Samson ordered, his voice dropping to a gravelly, imperceptible register. He didn't wait for her compliance. Samson seized Kat by the waist of her utility jacket, lifting her off her feet with effortless, terrifying strength. He hauled her into the narrow, windowless supply closet situated at the back of the guardhouse. The small wooden door clicked shut just as heavy boots hit the gravel outside. The closet was pitch black and suffocatingly cramped, smelling faintly of industrial floor cleaner and stale dust. Kat was pressed flush against Samson's massive chest, her leather messenger bag trapped awkwardly between them. She kept her hands planted flat against his tactical jacket to maintain a tiny fraction of personal space. Quiet, he breathed against her ear, the heat of his skin radiating through the darkness. Kat nodded stiffly, pushing her oversized glasses up her nose to stop them from sliding. Outside, harsh, unfamiliar voices barked commands. Flashlights swept through the ruined guardhouse, the beams slicing through the gaps in the closet door. If my phone rings right now, or if Fluffy somehow psychically summons a loud notification, we are doomed, Kat thought, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Samson remained completely motionless, his imposing frame acting as a physical shield between Kat and the flimsy door. He focused his enhanced senses, tracking the heavy, irregular heartbeats of the 4 intruders searching the room. However, an entirely different sensation was violently overriding his tactical concentration. In the stifling confines of the closet, Kat's scent was overwhelming. It wasn't just the crisp, sweet rain he had noticed earlier. It was the rich, intoxicating aroma of crushed wild blackberries blooming vividly under her sudden rush of adrenaline. It flooded Samson's senses, bypassing his rational mind and striking a primal, unbreakable chord deep within his soul. This is impossible. She is a Delta. She is sarcastic, defiant, and completely infuriating. Samson realized, a profound shock washing over him. She is my fated mate. The universe has paired the most dangerous king on the continent with the tech analyst who drives a purple car. The realization hit him with staggering force, demanding he claim her, protect her, and drag her away from this danger immediately. But Samson was a veteran tactician. Revealing a mate bond now, while they were hunted by an internal conspiracy, would paint a massive, glowing target directly on Kat's back. He ruthlessly suppressed the protective growl building in his throat. The transmitter is gone. The console is locked down. A rough, unfamiliar voice grunted from the main room. "Graves said it would be secure," another voice snarled. "Check the perimeter. Someone might still be in the trees." Kat squeezed her eyes shut, trying to control her rapid breathing. Samson slowly shifted his hand, resting his large palm comfortingly against the back of her head, weaving his fingers carefully through her messy dark hair. The subtle, protective gesture sent a confusing jolt of warmth straight down Kat's spine. After 10 agonizing minutes, the heavy boots retreated. The vehicle doors slammed shut, and the engines roared to life, fading back down the treacherous mountain road. Samson waited an additional 2 minutes before pushing the closet door open. The cold night air rushed back in. "They are gone," he stated flatly, his dark eyes deliberately avoiding her gaze. "We need to leave. Now." Chapter 8. The dawn light was just beginning to pierce through the heavy overcast sky by the time they returned to Kat's apartment. The exhausted journey back had been steeped in an unusual, loaded silence. Samson had commandeered the keys and driven the Grape on the return trip, his knees still awkwardly brushing the steering wheel, while Kat meticulously analyzed the digital bug on her tablet. Kat unlocked her apartment deadbolt, stepping inside and immediately tossing her faded leather messenger bag onto the kitchen counter. She shrugged off her dark utility jacket, dropping it over the back of a dining chair. Fluffy, the pristine white rescue cat, emerged from the bedroom, letting out a rusty, demanding yowl for his breakfast. "You survived the night," Kat told the cat dryly, moving to fill his ceramic bowl with kibble. "Congratulations." Samson stepped into the apartment, locking the door firmly behind him. He looked thoroughly exhausted, the harsh morning light highlighting the severe, tired lines of his face. He sank onto the lumpy sofa, resting his head back against the cushions. Surprisingly, Fluffy immediately trotted over, hopped onto the couch, and curled into a tight white ball directly on top of Samson's scuffed combat boot, falling asleep within seconds. "He commands a fearsome, legendary aura, yet my hostile pet treats him like a heated piece of luxury furniture," Kat noted, pulling a legal pad from a drawer. "It is endlessly baffling." "We have the transmitter's frequency," Kat announced, sitting cross-legged on the floor a few feet from the Alpha. She pushed her oversized glasses into place and tapped her pen against the paper. "But to find out who Graves is talking to, I need to match the digital signature against the Royal Registry. I need a suspect list." Samson didn't open his ink-dark eyes. "Start with the inner council. General Graves lacks the sophisticated intellect to organize a digital coup. He is the muscle. The architect is someone closer to the throne." Kat began scribbling names, formulating a matrix of potential traitors. However, she found her focus drifting constantly toward the king. Ever since they exited that cramped supply closet, his demeanor had fundamentally altered. He was hovering, positioning himself consistently between her and any windows or doors. He watched her with a strange, intense gravity that made her skin tingle. "He is acting like I am a fragile artifact that might shatter if the wind blows," Kat analyzed, frowning at her notepad. "I am a Delta, not an Omega needing constant, overbearing supervision. It is highly distracting." "Stop staring at me," Samson murmured, finally opening his eyes to lock onto hers. "I'm not staring," Kat lied smoothly, chewing on the inside of her cheek. "I am merely assessing your structural integrity. You look terrible." Samson actually chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the quiet room. "Your flattery is unparalleled, Kat." Before Kat could fire back a witty retort, a loud, violent crash obliterated the domestic calm. The thick glass of Kat's living room window shattered inward with explosive force. Shards of glass rained down across the faded rug like jagged, dangerous hail. A heavy, solid red brick tumbled across the floorboards, coming to a halt directly beneath the kitchen counter. Tied securely around the center of the masonry was a piece of pale, crinkled parchment. Samson was off the sofa in a fraction of a second, entirely displacing a very disgruntled Fluffy. He moved with lethal, blurring speed, bodily shoving Kat flat against the floor behind the kitchen island to shield her from potential projectiles. Kat gasped, her heart leaping into her throat as Samson hovered securely over her, his broad shoulders blocking the ruined window.
"Stay down,"
Samson growled, his voice vibrating with pure, murderous fury. He reached out, his long fingers plucking the threatening note from the brick. Chapter 9. Samson unfolded the crinkled parchment with deliberate, measured movements, his broad shoulders entirely shielding Kat from the shattered living room window. Jagged shards of glass carpeted the faded rug, and the biting morning wind whipped through the gaping hole, plunging the small apartment into a freezing temperature. "What does it say?" Kat asked, her voice steady despite the frantic fluttering of her pulse. She remained crouched behind the kitchen island, adjusting her oversized blue light blocking glasses. Samson's pitch-black eyes scanned the crude handwriting. It says, "Stop digging, or we bury you." He reached into his tactical jacket pocket, extracting the keys to the grape, and tossed them onto the pristine kitchen counter with a sharp metallic clatter. The sound punctuated the severe reality of their situation. General Graves, or whoever was orchestrating the treason, knew they were investigating the perimeter breach. They tracked us from the checkpoint, Samson realized, a lethal, possessive anger coiling tight within his chest. I brought danger directly to her sanctuary. I will dismantle whoever threw this brick, piece by piece. "We are leaving," Samson dictated, his deep voice leaving zero room for negotiation. "This environment is entirely compromised. The window cannot be repaired today, and you are entirely exposed to subsequent attacks." Kat stood up slowly, carefully avoiding the scattered glass. She wanted to argue, to defend her independent territory, but logic dictated he was right. The freezing wind was already making her shiver. She walked over to the dining chair and snatched up her dark utility jacket. She patted the deep front pocket, verifying the physical transmitter bug and her pouch of organic cat treats were still securely stashed inside. "I am practically homeless because I accidentally sent a bear meme," Kat lamented internally, slipping the jacket on. "My life choices are highly questionable right now." "Fine," Kat conceded, scooping her faded leather messenger bag off the kitchen counter. "But Fluffy is coming with us. I am not leaving him in a freezing apartment to fend off assassins." Right on cue, Fluffy trotted out from the bedroom, entirely unbothered by the shattered window. The white cat let out a raspy, demanding meow, rubbing his head against Kat's shin. Samson stared at the pristine feline, recalling the distinct layer of white fur still stubbornly clinging to his dark trousers. The Royal Zenith Suite does not accommodate pets. It is a highly classified, pristine tactical environment. "Then the Royal Zenith Suite is about to get a feline upgrade," Kat countered sharply. "He goes where I go." 30 minutes later, the three of them stood inside the sprawling, opulent Royal Zenith Suite, located at the very apex of the pack's central headquarters. The expansive penthouse featured floor-to-ceiling reinforced windows overlooking the city, polished marble floors, and an imposing unlit gas fireplace in the center of the room. Samson locked the heavy reinforced door, his posture remaining rigid. He watched as Kat gently placed Fluffy onto a luxurious velvet armchair. The cat immediately began kneading the expensive fabric with his sharp claws. "I am housing a highly destructive animal and a sarcastic tech analyst in my private sanctuary," Samson mused, rubbing his temples to stave off an impending headache. "And yet, her wild blackberry scent is the only thing currently keeping me sane." Kat unlatched her messenger bag, pulling out her biometric tablet. She set it on the gleaming mahogany dining table. "We need to identify Graves' co-conspirator immediately. If I can get within 3 feet of the general's personal device, I can clone his localized network and decrypt his communications." "General Graves is attending the Solstice Gala in the Grand Ballroom tonight," Samson informed her, his dark eyes tracking her movements. "To get within 3 feet of him, you will have to infiltrate high society." Kat froze, her fingers hovering over the glass screen. I am a Delta who lives in oversized sweaters. I do not infiltrate galas. You do now, Samson replied softly. Chapter 10. By early evening, the Royal Zenith Suite transformed into a staging ground. Kat sat at the mahogany table, meticulously modifying a small digital siphoning drive she had extracted from the depths of her faded leather messenger bag. She linked it to her biometric tablet, programming the tiny metallic device to rip data silently. If I mess up this cloning sequence, Graves will immediately detect the breach, Kat thought, holding her breath as she typed a complex string of code. No pressure, just the fate of the entire pack resting on my mediocre social skills. Samson emerged from his private quarters, having finally discarded his cat hair-covered trousers and tactical jacket. He wore a meticulously tailored midnight blue tuxedo that accentuated his imposing athletic build. The silver royal signet ring gleamed on his index finger. He looked every bit the terrifying, undisputed Alpha King. He walked over to a garment bag resting on the sofa and unzipped it. Your attire for the evening. Kat approached cautiously, pushing her oversized glasses up her nose. Inside the bag was a breathtaking sapphire blue evening gown. The fabric was spun from incredibly delicate, shimmering silk that caught the ambient light like water. It was an unapologetically lavish garment, carrying a staggering price tag that radiated sheer financial supremacy. I cannot wear this, Kat whispered, her hands hovering over the pristine silk. I will inevitably trip on the hem and humiliate the crown. You will be flawless, Samson assured her, his voice dropping to a smooth, encouraging rumble. Get dressed, we are running out of time. Kat retreated to the guest bathroom. She carefully removed her utility jacket, ensuring the transmitter bug and cat treats remained safely in the pocket draped over the vanity chair. She slipped into the sapphire gown. It fit her petite frame with stunning precision. She pulled the blue ink pen from her messy hair, allowing the dark strands to cascade in soft waves over her shoulders. Leaving her glasses securely on her face, because she actually needed to see the suspect, she grabbed a matching velvet clutch purse Samson had provided, tucked her mobile phone inside, and dropped the tiny digital siphoning drive in right beside it. When Kat stepped back into the main suite, Samson turned around. He froze. The Alpha King felt a sudden, powerful jolt hit his chest. The sapphire silk highlighted her delicate features, but it was the fierce, intelligent spark in her eyes that completely captivated him. The intoxicating aroma of crushed wild blackberries and sweet rain spiked in the room, making his heightened senses swim. She is stunning, Samson thought, his jaw clenching as he fought the overwhelming, primal urge to cancel the mission and keep his fated mate safely locked in the suite. I have to keep my focus. If I let my guard down, she becomes collateral damage. You look, Samson started, clearing his throat to banish the gravelly texture from his voice. Adequate. Thank you, Kat replied dryly, clutching the velvet purse. Let's go steal some treasonous data. They descended the private elevator to the grand ballroom. The space was a cacophony of wealth, teeming with elite alphas and betas wearing glittering jewels and sharp suits. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, radiant glow over the crowd. Kat kept her hand lightly resting on Samson's strong forearm as they navigated the throng. She discreetly scanned the room, her eyes darting between the towering aristocrats. Graves is not on the main floor, Kat murmured, leaning closer to Samson's side to be heard over the string quartet. Keep moving, Samson instructed quietly, his pitch-black eyes continuously scanning the perimeter for threats. He wouldn't miss a mandatory royal appearance. Chapter 11. Kat discreetly withdrew her mobile phone from the velvet clutch purse. Earlier, she had tethered the device directly to her biometric tactical tablet, which was securely locked upstairs in the Royal Zenith Suite. A small radar application pulsed on the screen, actively hunting for General Graves' unique digital signature. The signal is originating from the eastern balcony, Kat whispered, slipping the phone back into the purse and keeping her fingers tightly wrapped around the small digital siphoning drive. Samson offered a subtle nod.
I cannot accompany you outside. If I confront him directly, he will immediately raise his defensive shields and terminate his communications. You must approach him alone to ensure the siphoning drive works.
Approaching a massive, treasonous beta general by myself, Kat noted internally, her stomach performing an uncomfortable flip. This is exactly why I prefer the safety of computer monitors. At least my keyboard cannot physically assault me. Give me exactly 3 minutes, Kat requested, releasing his forearm. She navigated through the dense crowd of socialites, her sapphire blue gown trailing elegantly across the polished marble. She pushed open the heavy glass doors leading to the eastern balcony. The crisp night air provided a stark, refreshing contrast to the stifling warmth of the ballroom. General Graves stood near the stone balustrade, a formidable man with broad shoulders and a scowling expression. He was aggressively typing on a sleek, encrypted mobile device. Kat took a deep breath, pasting a brilliant, superficial smile onto her face. She walked directly toward him, stepping effortlessly into his personal space. "General Graves," Kat greeted smoothly, stopping a mere 2 feet away. Beneath the cover of her velvet clutch, she silently engaged the siphoning drive. A faint, imperceptible vibration confirmed it was connecting to his localized network. Graves snapped his head up, his eyes narrowing in confusion.
Do I know you, Delta?
"I am the lead network technician," Kat replied, engaging in rapid, witty banter to distract him from the tiny progress bar she knew was filling up on her device. "I just wanted to personally thank you for the sheer volume of chaotic patrol logs you submit. Deciphering your erratic border schedules truly keeps my department entertained." If she thinks she can mock me without consequence, she is vastly underestimating my temper. Graves fumed internally, his grip tightening dangerously on his phone. Who does this tiny, insignificant tech worker think she is? My logs are highly classified tactical maneuvers, not a puzzle for basement dwellers. Graves sneered, taking an intimidating step forward. Kat held her ground, refusing to shrink back. "Classified? Most of them read like abstract fiction. Last Tuesday, you claimed a squad was at the eastern checkpoint, yet the network registered them at the southern barracks. It is fascinating." Graves' expression hardened into pure, unadulterated suspicion. The mention of the eastern checkpoint struck a massive nerve. He shoved his phone into his pocket and abruptly reached out, his massive hand wrapping roughly around Kat's upper arm. "What exactly are you implying, Delta?" Graves demanded, his voice dropping into a lethal, threatening growl. Before Kat could formulate a sharp retort, the heavy glass doors to the balcony shattered the tense quiet as they swung open. Samson Ironheart stepped onto the terrace. The ambient chatter from the ballroom seemed to instantly die away behind him. He didn't rush, but his strides devoured the distance in seconds. He radiated a dominating, oppressive alpha authority that felt like a physical force.
"Remove your hand from my analyst, General,"
Samson commanded. His pitch-black eyes were locked onto Graves' grip with terrifying, murderous intent. Graves immediately released Kat's arm, taking a hasty step backward, his previous arrogance evaporating completely. Chapter 12. Kat immediately stepped behind Samson, rubbing her upper arm to soothe the stinging pressure Graves had left behind. She kept her grip firmly on her velvet clutch purse, feeling the distinct, double vibration of the siphoning drive. The data transfer was complete. "My apologies, Your Highness," General Graves stammered, his posture instantly submitting to the Alpha King's overwhelming dominance. The Delta was speaking out of turn regarding secure patrol logs. "She speaks with my direct authority," Samson stated, his voice a cold, unforgiving blade. He didn't break eye contact with the Beta General. "Return to the ballroom, Graves. We are finished here." Graves offered a stiff, anxious bow and hurried past them, practically fleeing back into the crowded gala. I wanted to break his wrist the moment he touched her, Samson thought, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. I am rapidly losing my tactical objectivity when it comes to my mate's safety. "Did you get it?" Samson asked quietly once the glass doors swung shut. Kat nodded, pulling the siphoning drive from her purse. "I have the entire encrypted directory. We need to get back to the tablet." They abandoned the Solstice Gala immediately, taking the private elevator back up to the Royal Zenith suite. The moment the heavy, reinforced door locked behind them, Kat kicked off her uncomfortable heels and rushed to the mahogany dining table. She plugged the tiny metal drive into her biometric tablet, her fingers flying rapidly across the glass screen to initiate the decryption sequence. Samson watched her work, his imposing frame leaning against the back of the sofa. The silence in the suite stretched on for hours. The complex encryption required Kat to manually break multiple firewalls, a tedious process that tested her patience. Around midnight, Samson walked into the pristine kitchen area. He brewed a fresh pot of dark roast, pouring the steaming liquid into 2 ceramic mugs. He carried them back to the table, setting one gently near Kat's elbow. "Drink," Samson instructed softly. "Your blackberry scent is fading into pure exhaustion." Kat paused her typing, offering him a grateful, tired smile. She took a sip of the bitter, highly caffeinated beverage, letting the warmth revive her flagging energy. She pushed her oversized glasses up her nose and returned to the complex code. "The algorithm Graves used is surprisingly antiquated," Kat murmured, her brow furrowing in concentration. "It's a brute force cipher. If I route it through the secondary mainframe..." She tapped a final command. The screen flickered violently before suddenly resolving into a clear, legible text log. Hundreds of secure messages flooded the display, detailing patrol routes, security blind spots, and coordinated rogue movements. Kat's eyes widened as she scrolled to the very top of the directory, locating the master contact orchestrating the entire conspiracy. This cannot be accurate. He is the most decorated official in the territory, Kat realized, a cold wave of dread washing over her. The betrayal goes deeper than we ever calculated. "Samson," Kat whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She turned the biometric tablet so the Alpha King could read the glowing screen. Samson leaned forward, his pitch-black eyes scanning the decrypted data. His expression turned instantly to stone. The logs proved that General Graves was not the mastermind. He was merely a pawn taking direct orders from the highest level of Pack government. The traitor was Chancellor Gideon. Chapter 13. The revelation hung in the stifling quiet of the Royal Zenith suite, heavy and suffocating. Chancellor Gideon was the architect of the treason, the man who had mentored Samson, who had sworn loyalty to the Ironheart lineage for 3 decades, was actively orchestrating the Pack's downfall. Samson stepped back from the mahogany dining table, his pitch-black eyes fixed unblinkingly on the glowing screen of Kat's biometric tablet. He didn't shout. He didn't shatter the ceramic coffee mugs resting near the edge of the wood. Instead, a profound, chilling stillness overtook his imposing frame. Gideon, Samson thought, a visceral surge of betrayal slicing through his chest like a jagged blade. The man who taught me how to hold a sword is the one currently aiming a dagger at my spine. The deception is total and ruinous. Seeking a momentary reprieve from the claustrophobic tension, the Alpha King walked toward the center of the expansive living room. He reached out and flicked a discreet brass wall switch. The imposing gas fireplace immediately ignited with a soft whoosh, a perfectly uniform row of blue and gold flames springing to life behind the reinforced glass. It provided a steady manufactured warmth, incapable of producing stray embers or requiring manual stoking. Kat watched him from the table. She remained barefoot, the hem of her sapphire blue evening gown brushing the polished marble floor. Her upper arm still throbbed a dull, rhythmic ache from where General Graves had grabbed her, but she ignored the discomfort. "He looks entirely invincible to the rest of the continent," Kat observed, her fingers tracing the rim of her ceramic mug. "But right now, staring into those artificial flames, he just looks like a man carrying a burden meant for 100 shoulders." She abandoned her workstation, abandoning the small digital siphoning drive still plugged into her tablet. Her bare feet made no sound as she crossed the room, stopping a few inches from his side. The sweet, grounding aroma of crushed wild blackberries and rain drifted upward, anchoring Samson's fracturing focus. "I am sorry," Kat offered softly, a rare moment of genuine sincerity completely devoid of her usual sarcasm. "A king is perpetually surrounded by a sea of smiling faces, Kat," Samson murmured, his deep voice carrying a gravelly, exhausted resonance. He turned his head to look at her, the dancing firelight catching the sharp angles of his jaw. "Yet, the throne is the most isolating precipice in existence. You can never discern who is holding you up, and who is actively waiting for you to plummet." Kat swallowed hard, a strange tightness gripping her throat. Well, for the record, I have zero interest in pushing you off a precipice. Mostly because you owe me a mountain cabin, and I refuse to let you perish before the deed is transferred. A genuine, weary smile tugged at the corner of Samson's mouth. He reached out, his knuckles lightly grazing the soft silk covering her shoulder. The proximity was suddenly magnetic, an inexorable pull that defied all logic and tactical restraint. He leaned down, his towering frame entirely focused on the petite delta before him. Kat didn't retreat. She tilted her chin upward, her pulse accelerating wildly. When his lips met hers, it wasn't a tentative inquiry. It was a breathless, desperate collision of shared adrenaline and undeniable chemistry. I am kissing the most lethal predator in the pack hierarchy, Kat realized, her hands instinctively rising to grip the lapels of his midnight blue tuxedo. And I never want him to stop. The kiss deepened, the ambient heat of the suite rising rapidly. But before Samson could pull her fully against his chest, a loud, catastrophic crack echoed through the penthouse. Instantly, the gas fireplace extinguished. The crystal chandeliers died. The Royal Zenith suite was violently plunged into pitch-black darkness. The power grid had been severed. Chapter 14. The abrupt, suffocating darkness triggered a primal alarm bells in Kat's mind. A targeted power outage at the apex of the central headquarters was not a random infrastructural failure. It was a highly coordinated siege. They tracked the decryption sequence, Kat deduced frantically, her mind racing faster than her hammering heart. Gideon knows we found him. We are sitting ducks in a luxury cage.
Get down!
Samson roared, the romantic vulnerability of the previous moment completely evaporating. Kat dropped to the marble floor, just as a deafening explosion ripped through the penthouse entryway. The heavy reinforced door, designed to withstand a siege, was blown entirely off its hinges. The ruined metal crashed violently against the mahogany dining table, permanently destroying the pristine entryway.
Fluffy!
Kat shrieked, scrambling across the floor in the dark. She crawled toward the velvet armchair where she had last seen the pristine white cat. Her hands swept over the luxurious fabric, finally closing around the furious, hissing feline. She pulled Fluffy tightly against her chest, the cat's claws snagging the delicate silk of her sapphire gown. With her free hand, Kat blindly felt her way to the table. Her fingers brushed the shattered remains of her ceramic coffee mug before miraculously closing around the cold metal casing of her biometric tablet. She yanked it from the table, pulling the siphoning drive out in the process, and clutched it to her side. I am not leaving my only tactical advantage behind, Kat swore, huddling behind the overturned armchair. Across the room, the terrifying sound of tearing fabric and shifting bone echoed in the blackness. Samson had discarded his midnight blue tuxedo jacket and forcefully transitioned into his massive, lethal wolf form. A low, rumbling snarl vibrated through the floorboards, shaking the very foundation of the suite. 3 heavy sets of boots crunched over the ruined doorframe. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, instantly illuminating the towering, ink-dark alpha wolf standing protectively between the intruders and Kat's hiding spot.
Kill the analyst.
A gruff, unfamiliar voice ordered.
Burn the digital evidence.
One of the rogues lunged forward, bypassing Samson in a desperate sprint toward the velvet armchair. The beam of his flashlight caught the glint of a vicious, serrated blade coated in a sickly, shimmering liquid. Silver, Samson registered, pure, unadulterated panic piercing his tactical fury. If that blade touches her, she is dead. Samson didn't hesitate. He launched his massive weight through the air, intercepting the rogue mid-stride. The wolf's jaws clamped down ruthlessly, neutralizing the threat in a single, devastating motion. But in his reckless dive to shield Kat, Samson exposed his own flank. The rogue's momentum drove the silver-laced blade directly into Samson's side. A horrific, guttural yelp tore from the alpha's throat. The sound hit Kat like a sudden plunge into a freezing river, instantly stealing the breath from her lungs. She watched in horror as Samson's massive form hit the marble floor. The silver acted like an immediate, paralyzing venom, violently triggering an involuntary shift back into his human form. He lay there in his torn dress shirt, gasping for air, blood pooling rapidly on the polished floor. The remaining two rogues hesitated, terrified by the sheer brutality they had just witnessed, before turning and fleeing back down the ruined corridor. "Samson!" Kat scrambled out from behind the chair, her bare feet slipping slightly on the marble. She dropped Fluffy, who immediately darted under the sofa and fell to her knees beside the Alpha King. His breathing was shallow, his ink-dark eyes clouded with excruciating agony. The silver was already searing his veins, halting his accelerated werewolf healing. "Safe room," Samson wheezed, his large hand gripping her wrist with weakening force. "Behind the bookcase." Chapter 15. Panic is a luxury the hunted cannot afford. Kat ruthlessly suppressed her terror, her analytical delta mind taking complete control of the dire situation. "Come on, you overgrown brute. You have to help me," Kat grunted, hooking her arms securely under Samson's broad shoulders. She strained with every ounce of her limited physical strength, her bare feet finding traction on the marble floor. She dragged his massive, bleeding form across the suite, leaving a horrific crimson streak in their wake. They reached the towering bookshelves flanking the extinguished gas fireplace. Kat pressed her tablet against a hidden biometric scanner she had noticed earlier, running a rapid, 3-second decryption bypass to override the royal lock. A heavy steel door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Kat hauled Samson inside the subterranean-style safe room, quickly kicking the door shut. It locked with a resounding, permanent finality, plunging them into the dim, battery-powered amber emergency lighting. If he dies in here, the entire pack falls into Gideon's treacherous hands. Kat calculated, her chest heaving as she lowered Samson onto a simple military cot in the center of the steel-lined room. "I refuse to let a man who pays this well bleed to death on my watch." The safe room was a sterile vault, stocked meticulously for apocalyptic scenarios. Kat scrambled toward the metal shelving units lining the back wall. She bypassed the weaponry and zeroed in on the medical and surveillance supplies. She grabbed a heavy trauma kit, a tiny localized comms earpiece, and an entire armful of dense, foil-wrapped emergency high-calorie survival bars. She dropped the supplies next to the cot. Samson was shivering violently, a cold sweat dampening his forehead. The silver-laced wound on his flank was deep and sluggish, the toxic metal completely short-circuiting his apex metabolism. "Silver halts the cellular regeneration," Kat muttered aloud, rapidly tearing open a gauze packet to apply direct pressure to the wound. Her sapphire blue silk gown was entirely ruined, stained with his blood. "To burn it out, your metabolism requires massive, immediate caloric fuel." Samson groaned, his head tossing restlessly against the thin pillow. "It burns, Kat." "I know it does," she replied firmly. She ripped the foil off a dense, chocolate-flavored survival bar. "Open your mouth, Your Highness. You are going to eat this if I have to forcefully shove it down your royal throat." Samson lacked the strength to argue. Kat broke off large pieces of the dense ration, feeding it to him while keeping her other hand pressed firmly against the gauze on his flank. He chewed mechanically, swallowing the dry, heavy food. She forced him to consume 3 entire bars, praying the massive influx of dense calories would jumpstart his healing factor. Slowly, agonizingly, the violent shivering began to subside. The localized heat around the wound intensified as his wolf physiology waged war against the silver poison. Kat let out a ragged breath, slumping back onto the cold steel floor beside his cot. She wiped her blood-stained hands on the skirt of her ruined gown. Samson rolled his head to the side, his ink-dark eyes cracking open. The delirium of the pain and the poison still clouded his gaze, stripping away his formidable tactical walls. He stared at her, taking in her messy dark hair, her oversized blue light-blocking glasses, and the fierce, protective determination etched into her features. She didn't run, Samson thought, the haze of his fever blurring the lines between internal monologue and spoken word. "My beautiful, stubborn mate stayed and fought for me." "You smell like blackberries," Samson mumbled, his voice a gravelly, slurred whisper. "You are my fated mate, Kat. I knew the moment I smelled you in that closet." Kat froze completely. Her lungs forgot how to draw oxygen. She stared at the Alpha King, entirely paralyzed by the confession that had just casually tumbled from his lips. Chapter 16. Morning arrived without any sunlight piercing the windowless, steel-lined walls of the safe room. The dim amber emergency lighting cast long, oppressive shadows across the space. Kat sat cross-legged on the cold floor, the screen of her biometric tablet glowing brightly in her lap. She had spent the last 6 hours utilizing the safe room's isolated, localized network to fully map Chancellor Gideon's digital footprint. The revelation of Samson's fated mate confession still echoed loudly in her skull, making her chest tighten with a confusing cocktail of panic and undeniable warmth. Fated mate, Kat repeated internally, pinching the bridge of her nose to stave off an impending headache. I accidentally texted a bear meme to the most terrifying alpha on the continent, and the universe decided we are cosmically bound. I require a very long vacation. A low groan broke the stifling silence. On the military cot, Samson shifted. The high-calorie survival bars had done their job. The deep wound on his flank had closed entirely, leaving behind a jagged, angry red scar. The silver was purged, but the sheer metabolic toll of healing such a catastrophic injury had left him profoundly weakened. Samson pushed himself upright, swinging his legs over the edge of the cot. His bare chest was smeared with dried blood, and his muscles trembled slightly under the exertion. He looked across the small room, his pitch-black eyes locking onto Kat. "You look terrible," Kat observed dryly, pushing her oversized glasses up her nose to hide her lingering shock. "The silver drain is significant," Samson admitted, his voice raspy. He rolled his broad shoulders, wincing at the stiff, lingering ache. The fever had broken and clarity had returned, bringing with it the horrifying realization of what he had blurted out the night before. "Kat, regarding what I said in my delirium, we are categorically not discussing your hallucinated romantic declarations right now," Kat interrupted swiftly, raising a hand to halt his words. She tapped the glass screen of her tablet. "We have a treasonous chancellor to dismantle." Samson clamped his jaw shut, accepting the temporary reprieve. "What did you find in the directory?" "Gideon is hosting a clandestine meeting today at noon," Kat reported, rotating the tablet so Samson could view the decrypted schedule. "He is meeting with the rogue commanders at the dilapidated shipyard on the southern docks. He intends to finalize the structural weaknesses he plans to exploit." Samson attempted to stand, his legs wobbling noticeably before he locked his knees to maintain his balance. "I will contact my loyal guards. We will raid the docks." "No," Kat countered, standing up quickly. "If you march an army down there, Gideon will detect the movement and scatter. He will burn his communications, and we will lose the definitive proof required to dethrone a chancellor." Kat scooped up the tiny, localized comms earpiece from the floor, keeping it clutched tightly in her free hand as she walked over to the heavy steel door of the safe room. "I need to plant the digital bug transmitter. I can sync it to his personal device during the meeting, recording the audio and securing the physical evidence of his treason." "Out of the question," Samson growled, his protective instincts violently rejecting the plan. "You are a Delta analyst. You do not engage in field espionage alone. It is a suicide mission, and I expressly forbid it." "You can barely stand, Samson," Kat pointed out pragmatically, refusing to flinch under his alpha authority. "Your protective mandates are currently useless. My utility jacket, which contains the transmitter, is still draped over the vanity chair in the guest bathroom out there." Before he could physically intercept her, Kat pressed her tablet against the internal biometric scanner, initiating a rapid bypass. The heavy steel door slid open. She stepped out into the ruined, silent living room of the Royal Zenith Suite, leaving a fiercely protesting, weakened king behind. Chapter 17. Kat stood in the ruined living room of the Royal Zenith Suite, her bare feet cold against the polished marble. Before stepping fully away, she tapped a rapid sequence onto her biometric tactical tablet, retroactively commanding the localized network to seal the safe room door, effectively locking the weakened Alpha King inside. "I am committing egregious treason by trapping the monarch," Kat realized, a sudden dive of her stomach making her slightly nauseous. "But if he tries to fight in his current condition, he will perish. I am saving his life by being insubordinate." She navigated carefully around the debris of the blown-out entrance. A soft rustling sound drew her attention to the sofa. Fluffy, her pristine white rescue cat, was huddled underneath the heavy furniture, his tail twitching in profound annoyance. Cat hurried into the guest bathroom. Slipping the dark utility jacket on over her ruined silk gown, she dropped the comms earpiece into the deep front pocket alongside the digital bug transmitter. Returning to the living room, she pulled out the pouch of organic cat treats and shook it. Fluffy instantly abandoned his hiding spot, trotting over with a demanding yowl. Cat scooped the heavy feline into her arms. She walked back to the safe room, utilizing her tablet to briefly open the heavy steel door just wide enough to show Fluffy inside. "Keep him company," Cat instructed the feline. Samson instantly lunged for the narrow opening, his massive hands reaching for the steel frame, but Cat rapidly engaged the tablet's hydraulic override, snapping the heavy metal shut inches from his fingers. Retrieving the tiny, localized comms earpiece from her jacket pocket, Cat pressed it firmly into her right ear. She synced it to her tablet, establishing a secure audio recording loop. Firmly into her right ear, she synced it to her tablet, establishing a secure audio recording loop. She bypassed the destroyed suite entrance and descended the private elevator to the lobby. Utilizing her Delta clearance, she commandeered a discreet Royal Fleet sedan from the night valet. Cat drove swiftly to her abandoned apartment building. She stepped through her front door, wincing at the freezing temperature pouring in through the permanently shattered living room window. The glass still littered the faded rug. She bypassed the debris, marching straight to her bedroom. She hastily stripped off the ruined, blood-stained sapphire silk gown, abandoning it on the floor. She dressed in pragmatic denim jeans, a simple long-sleeve shirt, and sturdy sneakers. Finally, she slipped on the dark utility jacket she had brought from the penthouse. "I am severely unqualified for physical combat," Cat mused, snatching the keys to the grape off the pristine kitchen counter. "But I refuse to let an archaic, treasonous chancellor destroy the only stable employment I have ever secured." Leaving the fleet sedan behind, Cat climbed into her meticulously restored plum-purple vintage hatchback. The engine sputtered before settling into an uneven purr. She navigated the treacherous winding roads toward the dilapidated southern shipyard, ensuring her headlights were extinguished as she neared the desolate industrial perimeter. Cat parked the grape behind a rusted shipping container. The shipyard was a sprawling graveyard of decaying metal and rotting wood. She slipped out of the vehicle, her biometric tablet glowing faintly in her hand as she tracked Chancellor Gideon's digital footprint to a cavernous warehouse near the waterfront. She crept through a rusted side entrance. The interior smelled of stagnant water and decaying fish. Through the shadows, she spotted the Chancellor standing near a wooden workbench littered with scattered rusted tools, including a heavy iron wrench, conversing quietly with two rogue commanders. Moving with surreptitious grace, Cat crouched behind a stack of wooden crates. She pulled the digital bug from her utility jacket pocket, meticulously syncing it to Gideon's localized frequency via her tablet. The audio of their treasonous plot immediately began streaming into her earpiece. She tapped the save function, preparing to retreat. Suddenly, a heavy hand clamped down ruthlessly on Cat's shoulder, hoisting her up from her hiding spot. She gasped, her tablet clattering against the concrete floor. Chancellor Gideon stepped forward, stepping out from the shadows with a malevolent glare. He reached out and forcefully ripped the tiny earpiece from Cat's ear, dropping it to the floor and crushing it beneath the heel of his polished leather shoe. "This pathetic Delta thinks she can outmaneuver me," Gideon thought, a cruel smile twisting his features. "She is nothing but collateral damage in my ascent to the throne." "You are exceptionally far from your computer screens, little wolf," Gideon sneered. Chapter 18. Inside the subterranean safe room, the ambient amber lighting cast long, rigid shadows over the steel walls. Samson Ironheart paced the confined space like a caged predator. His massive frame was tense, his muscles pulled taut beneath his ruined dress shirt. His deep silver wound had entirely closed into a jagged, angry red scar, but the metabolic exhaustion still lingered heavily in his bones. Fluffy, the pristine white cat, sat entirely unbothered on the military cot, meticulously grooming a paw while surrounded by discarded foil wrappers from the emergency survival bars. Samson stood rigidly in front of the safe room's steel tactical console. He had synced the bunker's internal monitors to Kat's localized network the moment she locked him inside. For the past hour, he had listened intently to her steady breathing and the rustle of her dark utility jacket over the audio feed. He heard her infiltrate the dilapidated shipyard. He heard the treasonous dialogue confirming Gideon's guilt. Then, he heard a sharp gasp, followed immediately by a harsh, deafening static snap as the earpiece was violently destroyed. The audio feed went permanently dead. A visceral, paralyzing panic gripped Samson's chest, hitting him with a sudden, suffocating cold that entirely stripped the air from his lungs. She explicitly disobeyed a direct royal order, Samson thought, a terrifying protective fury eclipsing his lingering weakness. I will dismantle this treasonous chancellor, piece by piece, for daring to lay a hand on my mate. Samson did not hesitate. He marched to the heavy steel door, utilizing pure, unadulterated alpha strength fueled by lethal desperation. He gripped the manual emergency release wheel, his muscles strained, the angry red scar on his flank protesting violently, but he ignored the physical toll. With a deafening metallic groan, the heavy steel door surrendered, sliding open just enough for his massive frame to squeeze through. He immediately shoved the heavy metal back into its frame until it clicked shut, leaving Fluffy safely confined in the bunker, and sprinted through the ruined Royal Zenith suite. Samson bounded down the emergency stairwell, bypassing the elevator entirely. He burst into the subterranean garage, demanding the keys to his custom, matte charcoal armored SUV from a startled guard. He did not wait to explain the crisis or mobilize a sprawling elite unit. He merely sent a rapid, encrypted deployment coordinate to his most loyal betas. The heavy tires of the armored SUV screeched violently against the asphalt as Samson tore through the city streets. The journey to the southern docks was a blur of calculated, reckless velocity. He abandoned the vehicle a block away from the shipyard, stepping out into the brisk coastal wind. He did not rely on technological radar to find the specific warehouse. He closed his pitch-black eyes and expanded his heightened apex senses. Through the overpowering stench of brine and rusting iron, a faint, distinct aroma drifted on the wind. It was the intoxicating blend of crushed wild blackberries and sweet rain. Her scent was spiking with intense fear. Samson moved with lethal, predatory silence, tracking the olfactory trail directly to a cavernous, decaying warehouse. The massive wooden double doors at the front were bolted shut from the inside. He did not search for a discreet entrance. Samson took a brief, running start and delivered a devastating, concentrated strike to the center of the rotting wood. The heavy doors exploded inward, permanently splintering off their rusted hinges and crashing violently to the concrete floor in a cloud of archaic dust. Chapter 19. The explosive arrival of the Alpha King sent a shockwave of sheer terror through the dilapidated warehouse. The two rogue commanders instantly staggered backward, drawing their weapons with trembling hands. Kat was backed firmly against a heavy wooden workbench, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Chancellor Gideon stood merely 2 feet away, his expression morphing from arrogant triumph to profound horror. Samson stepped over the shattered remains of the wooden doors, his pitch-black eyes locked entirely onto Gideon. The king did not speak. The suffocating, oppressive aura of his alpha dominance flooded the expansive room, a tangible force that made the very air difficult to breathe. I am going to tear his throat out, Samson resolved, his jaw ticking in murderous anticipation. No trial, no tribunal. He dies on this concrete floor. Kill him! Gideon shrieked, his voice cracking as he shoved Kat roughly aside to use her as a diversion. He is weakened from the silver! Attack him! The two rogues lunged forward, motivated entirely by the desperate instinct of survival. Samson intercepted them with ruthless efficiency. He did not bother shifting into his wolf form. His human combat prowess was unparalleled. He caught the first rogue by the collar, launching him effortlessly across the room into a stack of decaying crates. He neutralized the second with a precise, devastating strike to the jaw, rendering the man instantly unconscious. Gideon, realizing his fabricated coup had catastrophically failed, turned toward the rusted side exit. He intended to flee, abandoning his pawns. Kat watched the Chancellor pivot away from her. The sharp dive of her stomach transformed rapidly into pragmatic defiance. She glanced down at the cluttered workbench beside her. Her eyes immediately locked onto the heavy, solid iron wrench she had noticed earlier, resting among the scattered tools. "I am profoundly unqualified for physical altercations," Kat admitted to herself, her fingers wrapping securely around the cold metal handle. "But I refuse to let the man who shattered my living room window simply walk away." As Gideon took his first frantic step toward the exit, Kat swung the heavy wrench with every ounce of momentum she could generate. The solid iron connected violently with the side of the Chancellor's right knee. A sickening, audible crunch echoed through the warehouse. Gideon let out a shrill scream of agony. His leg buckled completely, the joint shattered beyond immediate repair. Incapable of bearing any weight on the ruined limb, the Chancellor collapsed onto the dusty concrete, his escape permanently halted. He clutched his ruined knee. Samson crossed the remaining distance in 2 massive strides. He loomed over the crippled Chancellor, his presence radiating lethal authority. "Your treason is concluded, Gideon," Samson stated, his gravelly voice devoid of any mercy. Kat dropped the heavy iron wrench back onto the workbench with a loud clatter, bending down briefly to retrieve her fallen tablet from the concrete floor. Her hands were shaking violently, now that the immediate adrenaline was beginning to recede. She pushed her oversized blue light blocking glasses up her nose, attempting to project a facade of calm stability. Samson turned away from the groveling traitor. His terrifying, murderous demeanor vanished the instant his pitch-black eyes met hers. He closed the space between them, his large hands reaching out to gently grip her shoulders.
"Are you injured?"
Samson demanded quietly, his gaze sweeping frantically over her pragmatic denim jeans and dark utility jacket, searching for any hidden wounds. "I am entirely intact," Kat assured him, offering a shaky, exhausted smile. The scent of wild blackberries slowly began to settle into a calmer, sweeter note, "though I believe I just drastically altered the political hierarchy of your administration." "My mate is a terrifying, resourceful menace," Samson mused, a profound wave of affectionate awe washing away his lingering fury. "I have never been more captivated." Chapter 20. 3 weeks later, the persistent chill of the coastal winter had finally begun to yield. Kat stood in the center of her modest apartment. The shattered living room window was officially repaired, replaced with pristine reinforced glass that successfully blocked the harsh wind. The faded rug had been meticulously vacuumed, completely free of any residual debris. She was currently surrounded by a fortress of cardboard boxes, methodically wrapping her ceramic mugs in newspaper. A thick, legal manila folder rested prominently on the nearby dining table. Fluffy, the pristine white cat, was doing his very best to hinder the process by deliberately sitting inside every empty box she attempted to utilize. A distinct, rhythmic knock echoed from the front door. Kat paused, wiping a smudge of dust from her cheek. She walked over and pulled the door open. Samson Ironheart stood in the narrow hallway, wearing a casual, dark Henley shirt that stretched comfortably across his broad chest, paired with pristine combat boots. The heavy burden of his royal crown seemed noticeably lighter since Gideon's public incarceration and the subsequent dismantling of the rogue factions. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his pitch-black eyes immediately locking onto the towering stacks of cardboard boxes. A sudden, tense rigidity seized his imposing frame. If she leaves the pack boundaries, I will inevitably abandon the throne and follow her, Samson realized, the primal instinct of his mate bond flaring with undeniable certainty. A king is entirely useless without his equal. "You are packing," Samson observed, his deep voice carrying a distinct edge of carefully suppressed panic. "I am," Kat confirmed, turning back to the dining table. She picked up the thick, legal manila folder resting on the wood and tossed it casually onto the pristine kitchen counter. Before Samson could demand an explanation, Fluffy launched himself from a nearby box. The heavy cat landed with a familiar thud directly onto the toe of Samson's immaculate combat boot. Instead of attacking the leather, Fluffy simply curled into a tight white ball, draped his tail over his nose, and immediately began to snore loudly. Samson stared down at the feline hostage situation, letting out a long, weary sigh. "Where are you going, Cat?" "Well," Cat started, leaning against the counter and crossing her arms. She chewed thoughtfully on the inside of her cheek. "A very wealthy, incredibly overbearing monarch recently deposited a staggering sum of hazard pay into my banking account. So, I officially purchased the secluded mountain property on the Western Ridge." Samson's jaw clenched. "I see." "It has a wraparound porch, upgraded digital network capabilities, and an expansive yard for Fluffy to terrorize local wildlife." Cat continued, pushing her oversized glasses up her nose. A sly, genuine smile finally broke across her features. "It is also conveniently located only 40 minutes from the central headquarters, which means you can easily visit on weekends, provided you agree to leave your royal ego at the perimeter line." Samson froze. The paralyzing tension evaporated from his shoulders, replaced by a profound, sweeping relief. He looked up, his dark eyes locking onto her brilliant smile. "I suppose dealing with an overbearing alpha is an acceptable trade-off for a fully funded mountain retreat," Cat reasoned internally, her pulse accelerating as he stepped toward her, entirely ignoring the snoring cat on his foot. Samson closed the distance, trapping her gently against the pristine kitchen counter. "I will visit every single day," he promised, his gravelly voice dropping into a register meant strictly for her. Cat tilted her head up, the scent of crushed wild blackberries and sweet rain blooming vividly in the quiet apartment. "I expect nothing less." When he kissed her, it wasn't fueled by the desperate adrenaline of a pending ambush. It was slow, victorious, and promised a lifetime of witty banter, compromised footwear, and meticulous, unyielding devotion. The end. Quick favor, don't go anywhere yet. If you thought Cat was brave for accidentally airdropping a bear meme to a terrifying Alpha King during a war council, wait until you meet the heroine in this next story on your screen. You have to hear this disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It is completely unhinged.